Hello and welcome to the Local Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Johnson. The Local Leaders Podcast provides a platform for successful business owners to share their stories, their experiences, their advice, and their ideas in order to help our listeners achieve more success in their business and in their lives. Get ready, another great show is coming up. Hey, good morning. Happy Monday morning to all of our listeners out there. This is Jeff Johnson, your host of the Local Leaders Podcast, and I want to welcome all our listeners to this show. And we are super stoked today to be able to bring to you Matt Poirier. Matt's got, he and his wife, Jana, actually have three different brands or three different concepts that they've got going. They've got the Hound, the Depot, and Sneak and Dawdle. And welcome to the show, Matt. I should have said that first.
Oh, welcome. Hi, how are you?
Hey,
Good to be here. Thanks for
we
having me.
Yeah, no, we're thankful to have you on. Appreciate you taking some time out of your day to share a little bit of time with us. And, I just kind of want to open it up and give you the floor and let you share a little bit about your journey. I mean, you're a multi-unit operator. And we'd kind of love to hear the story of how you got where you are today.
Okay. Well, it started, it was 10 years this July when I drove cross country from Northern California with my new wife to with a specific plan of opening a restaurant. And we were open to buying existing concepts or starting our own, but getting into the business is something I wanted to do. And so we July 4th weekend, we drove cross country and started looking for a place. We settled here north of Auburn, and we looked at a few different concepts over the next 6 months.
Uh-huh.
My wife was working remotely for one of the big four accounting firms in the audit department. So she had a finance degree and had audit background. I was a poli-sci major from UCSD and I had worked in restaurants and bars, through college, and then some a little bit, and then did the corporate world thing for a little bit, and was miserable. And so, I wanted to get in the restaurant business.
Yeah.
So we found a space that was still in operation, but was obviously not doing well. The owner was a catfish salesman, still is.
Oh, wow.
And had this bar on the side or this restaurant bar on the side, and it was not his main focus, and had a series of managers that did not do right by him. So he was, I sent him an email, and I don't know, a couple of weeks later, he got back to me, and that was in October-ish. And then, by January 1, we'd taken over the space. That was January 2012. And we did a 2.5 month build out and opened March 16th, 2012. So we'll be going on 10 years this coming up this March for the Hound.
Nice.
Yeah. And then just celebrated 6 years at the Depot, and we were approached 7 or 8 years ago. The city had purchased and cleaned up the old train depot in town with had a gas station on the corner. So they'd done all the EPA stuff, and the building was in really, really bad shape, but it was an iconic historic building right at the entrance to downtown Auburn. And so they kind of put a RFP out there, and we submitted our plan and what we wanted to do, and they accepted it. And we partnered with them to renovate that building and put the depot in there. And that's just celebrated 6 years. And then I've been wanting to open a bar and something that focused more on craft cocktails.
Uh-huh.
And so there's Opelika, which is a small town right next to Auburn. They're, share a border, and it's got a really quaint, nice looking historic downtown. And they there's a building owner over there, a guy who owns a lot of the real estate, a couple blocks of stuff over there. And I've been looking at those buildings since before I opened the Depot, actually. Always intrigued by old historic buildings, beautiful old, they were cotton and tobacco warehouses. and old brick, and cool facades. And there's some really cool buildings, lots of good character.
Yeah.
And he contacted me in 2018 and it said, I think it was in the maybe early spring, and said, hey, I'm renovating part of these buildings for a couple other concepts, and I have some space. I have, I forget, it's 2,500, 3,000 square feet of space. You got anything up your sleeve? And I did.
You're like, matter of fact, I do.
yeah. So we, and that was, so we hammered that out. We started building out in August, and my goal was to be done and have it in service by December 31st to take advantage of some of the tax benefits of that. So we did. We opened up New Year's Eve 2018. Weren't quite all done yet, but we got our CO and we're able to open. And that's Sneak and Dawdle, and that'll be, 3 years this New Year's Eve. So that's kind of the history of the spaces. I think the overall idea with the concepts is to have them be approachable. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of a casual Northern California flip-flops and shorts in the summer type of person, and I want people to feel comfortable in my restaurants no matter what, or my spaces, Mm-hmm. So the Hound was definitely a couple things. One is low budge. We had some savings, but we didn't really want to raise a bunch of money. We wanted to retain as much ownership as possible. Right. We had some small minor investors. My brother-in-law is in construction, so he did some of the construction in exchange for some equity on the Hound. And then fortunately, my father-in-law is a retired rocket scientist, basically engineer, and really smart guy. And first thing he did when he retired was buy a sawmill. And so he's very good with woodwork. And when my wife and I got married in 2010 on their property in Chambers County, just north of here, we retrieved a bunch of fallen logs off the property, and he made all the tables for our outdoor wedding. He made the bar, and did some really beautiful work for us for our wedding, which was hosted on their property that they'd had for 30, 40 years. And so that bar at our wedding is now the host stand at the Hound. And the top is finished. Yeah, so the top is finished in some really beautiful Eastern cedar. Uh-huh. So Eastern cedar has kind of reds and oranges and ambers and all these really beautiful colors. And we use a 2-part epoxy on top, which protects it and makes it just pop. It's really beautiful stuff. So we ended up doing the bar top in that. We have a live edge Eastern cedar, 30-foot long bar top at the Hound. And then we built most of our tables. Some of them are live edge, some are not, in this Eastern cedar, and did all the epoxy on them. So we did a lot of do it ourselves. Mm-hmm. And on that one, the Depot, we had a little bit more financing. The Hound, took off and it was doing well, so we had some cash, and we were able to work out some favorable financing with the city, and so we didn't do as much of that ourselves. However, we were able to salvage a lot of the old heart pine out of the building when we out of the old platform and out of some of the raised. It was multi-level space, so we were able to salvage that and repurpose it. So we have a chef's table that is made out of this. The building was built in 1904, so the wood's old. Our bar top, again, is made out of the heart pine and some other trim pieces. But we spent more money on that. We didn't do as much ourselves on that one,
right?
And even less on Sneak and Dawdle. Sneak and Dawdle, my father-in-law, I want to do the wood bar tops are kind of our signature at this point. And so I was just talking to him, and what do you think? I was thinking about redwood from kind of my California roots, or what do we have out here? And he said, well, I think I have some black walnut. And so sure enough, one of his stacks of wood that he'd had some beautiful black walnut that we refinished. And so Sneak and Dawdle has a really, my favorite yet. It's beautiful black walnut, finished black walnut bar at Sneak and Dawdle. So yeah, overall the concepts have been approachable, a little bit of hand made aspect to each one. As for the restaurants, generally speaking, it's a one-page menu. I'd rather do less and do it well and be more focused. So I really limit to one page. We've fudged a little bit. Some of our menus are legal size and not necessarily. Yeah, they're like, you didn't specify letter.
Yeah, next is
11.
next is 11 by 17, right?
Yeah, we haven't gone there yet, but so but the idea of I'd rather do less and do it well. There's a lot of concepts out there that do a lot of, there's a lot of mediocre or just terrible dishes on something that's 3, 4, 5 pages long, without naming names. But there's concepts that do that stuff. Training's more difficult. Everything's more difficult, and I don't think the product's any better. So one-page menu, and then just really focusing and investing on training for service. One of the things that I heard when I was, talking to people in town was, it's a college town, so service is, okay, never that good,
Right.
And I was like, okay, well, why does it have to be that way? And so we really, I think our concept, the Hound in particular, was the first one to really focus on training and continuing to put a lot of energy and money towards training to try and elevate service, to have a standard of service, to train by it, and to coach on that as far as our front of house is concerned, to set some standards for ticket times in the kitchen and things of that nature, so that we could deliver a seamless service, an excellent service, or a, maybe not totally fine dining, but aiming for that, that quality of service.
Well, that makes sense, and I really like the story, and the first thing I'll say about it is I hear in you some passion behind the design, the whole building component of
Sure.
it. So was that always something that you enjoyed doing? Was kind of creating and designing?
Not until I did it. I didn't really
Yeah.
realize that. For me, the restaurant business, I was doing working for some really big companies, global companies, and the last one was a cubicle that was 2.5 feet wide and making 125 cold calls a day, and I could kind of glance out the window, had a beautiful view of the Bay Bridge,
Yeah.
but I was in a high rise and I just was miserable. And my thought was, if I can create a space that people could come into and focus on taking good care of them, that being a host is something, and hospitality, something I felt was ingrained in me, and something I enjoyed. And then having worked, waited tables and bartended and bar backed and done everything, most jobs in a restaurant, the rush of the Friday night is not much like it. You're on your feet, you're moving around, a lot of moving parts, a little bit of, so hopefully somewhat contained chaos was a rush for me. And so that was what drew me in. And then the design of it, and I've always liked old buildings. I mean, my mother grew up in a beautiful old Victorian home that her and her 9 siblings were raised in Campbell, California. And I've always loved my grandfather's house there. I've always been joked about, putting a coffee shop or something in it, because and restoring it and keeping it. So when we came across the Hound space is a historic building built in the 1930s. I think 1930 something, 20 something, late 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some speculation as to what it was first. Some people say a jail, they're not sure, but what it's on the record for is it was the first, it was the home of the Auburn Bulletin, which was the first printing press in Lee County. And so the family, the Davis family, Paul Davis, who's passed, but he was a journalist who wrote about a big expose on the mental health care system in the 70s and was nominated for a Pulitzer for it. So him and his sons ran the Auburn Bulletin in this space, and they owned the building still. And we talked to them. So it's an old building, and it's definitely has some quirks. And same thing with the Depot. We like them. I like I think you have more character for sure, but they definitely pose some challenges. That would be up there with the challenges of working with that.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've talked to a lot of different people who kind of went into old buildings and the construction piece and all the work involved in getting the facility or the building ready for occupancy and to run an operation out of is tremendous. So I know you guys had your hands full, and especially on that first one when you got started, you were doing all of it yourself, or the majority of it yourself, with the help of family and friends and creative financing to get it going.
Yeah. And we were able to, amazingly, I have to say, our local community bank, I know you're, for other leaders, and I've dealt with this, some other owners, as far as there's a million different ways to finance a business, literally a different, million different ways. I've spoken to I have friends that own bars and restaurants in San Diego, where I lived for 10 years. And, they've done all kinds. Usually it's investors, I talked to another guy who who just actually sold out to private equity, who owned a bunch of places in Scottsdale area and around there. And, he said at one of his concepts, they raised $2.2 million with 22 people, 100 grand each or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And when he had to clean that up when he sold that, part of it out to private equity. And I wanted to retain it more. And I had heard somebody say, if it doesn't do well, you wish you had all investors, because you can walk away and you're good. But if it does do well, you're going to wish you could pay off that loan and have all of it to yourself, Right. And so, I wasn't employed at the time. My wife was, and had a good job management level, and, and so we went into a couple different banks, and we walked into one, and the guy there was, I don't know what he saw, but we had a business plan and a vision and some passion, I guess, but he loaned us some money, and that was even my dad, was not very hopeful. He's a businessman, entrepreneur for 40 something years. And it's like, unsecured, loan for a restaurant. You have no restaurant experience, and hey, it doesn't hurt to ask.
Yeah.
And
you can only get
it did. We had one bank that was, I don't know, that, I think different banks have different priorities. Yeah. Some are more open, and this is it's Auburn Bank. It's community bank here, and so they were about investing in the community, and they have been, since day one, have been really supportive of us. And so I encourage other owners it doesn't hurt to ask, try that route. So
yeah, you're exactly right. And you can only get a no. It's the worst case scenario. So it might hurt your feelings every now and again, but you came from sales, so you were accustomed to hearing no.
Right.
So that makes it a little bit easier.
Still don't like it.
Yeah, nobody does. Nobody does. You got a great idea. You got the passion. You got and now you've got experience. So now you got all this years under your belt, and I'm sure that that component wouldn't be as difficult, depending on the economy, of course. That sometimes slows down the banks. But yeah, I've had several conversations with community banks being always positively mentioned as a great resource.
Yeah. So one thing I think you wanted, to know or were asking about was the concept. So the Hound, I wanted, again, walking around the market. I'd come from San Francisco, where there was 2 or 3 amazing bourbon bars, Rick House down in the financial district, and different places that focused on bourbon. Well, I get here in Auburn in the South, and there's no place that has a bourbon selection. Mm-hmm. And so I said, well, okay, there's an opportunity. Again, California, big craft beer scene on the West Coast. I'm sure East Coast too, but I know where I'm from. And so big craft beer scene up and down that coast, and, Rogue, Sierra Nevada, some of the original Stone. And there was, one pizza place that had 20 taps that had and even they had a lot of the domestics and stuff on there that, the Budweisers and stuff. They didn't even have a lot of the craft beer. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to have good craft beer, good selection there. And then the menu approach there was simple American takes on classics, not necessarily Southern classics, but classics. So meatloaf, burger, steak, that kind of stuff on there, elevated but approachable. And so we, quickly learned that Alabama is not high on liquor companies' lists as far as you got to jump through a lot of hoops.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the population that, a Georgia or Florida has, or Tennessee. And it's, the liquor laws here are a little challenging, and taxes are a little higher. So it's not always high on everybody's list. So I couldn't get all the good stuff that I wanted to get, that I could get in where I'm from and surrounding states even. Mm-hmm. But we quickly pretty much bought everything we could on the shelves as far as bourbon's concerned, and brought in a lot of craft beers. I think we were one of the first. It's since changed, but we're one of the first places to have 28 taps and have 2 nitro lines and just do some of the things that were not done here. So that was the backbone of the concept at the Hound. The Depot, no seafood place in town. I wanted to do fresh seafood, and so that focus. We do a little more balance now with some chops and steaks, but because there's also not a steakhouse in town.
Oh yeah.
A dedicated steakhouse there wasn't. Now there is, but still not a high end one. Outback I guess was in town, so I guess I don't know. But anyways, so seafood, fresh oysters, fresh seafood flown in from around the area regionally, and frankly from around the world, 4 or 5 days a week, and focusing on kind of a global flavor profile. And we found a great chef who would travel the world for Marriott and Capella hotel group, and had cooked in Ecuador and Bali and Scottsdale and Virginia Beach, and I can't remember, India. He's been all over the place, all over the world in his career, and was kind of getting tired of being moved around. He was the guy who would come in and get a hotel restaurant up and running, and be like, "Great job. Okay, now you're going to Ecuador."
Yeah. See ya.
He's like, "All right, I want to put down some roots."
Yeah.
And so Scott, Chef Scott has been great. He's been with us all 6 years, and as part owner, I made him a partner. And so we do seafood and a little bit more wine focused. Well, a lot more wine focused, wine and cocktails, less beer.
Yeah.
And then Sneak and Dawdle is, we have beer and wine, but we're focused on craft cocktails there. So, and it's kind of a speakeasy. So the Depot is a little bit fancier. We have cloth napkins, linen napkins, not paper. It's definitely the space. If anything, I went a little too formal, I think. But it's a beautiful old building. My wife was really the mastermind behind the design, found all the unique lighting, and the main dining room is anchored by I think it's 6 or something feet tall and 4 or 5 feet wide, hanging crystal chandelier in the middle of the dining room. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of old, really cool architectural stuff in that old Depot building. But and then Sneak and Dawdle it was kind of, the building had no windows already, and we kind of went with the speakeasy style space. So it's dark, it's monochromatic colors. I did all the design on that. So it's a real dark kind of. It's got a teal blue booths and curtains and different things like that. And then I took kind of an idea from actually it's called a snug. I thought it was called a sneak, but it's a snug. It's a booth at the end of a bar. Okay, and Irish and British pubs was common to have this closed off space at the end of a bar where the local priest or the officer on his rounds or women who weren't allowed in bars back in the day could go, or the owners could have a drink and be out of the public's eye.
Yeah.
Right. So and I saw it on a show that I used to watch on Netflix or whatever called Peaky Blinders. Peaky Blinders they own a bar, and they have the owners, and they're in there, and the door shuts, and this little thing slides open. The bartender gives them their drinks and closes it, and they have some privacy. And I'm like, that's cool. I want that feature.
I want that. Yeah, I gotta have one.
I want that. That's cool. That's cool. And so one of the features of Sneak and Dawdle is is the snug. Now, in my mind, for some reason, I thought it was called a sneak. So I came out of the shower one day and I'm like, how would we just call it sneak? And you sneak in for a drink. You call it sneak in for a drink. It's one word, super simple, and it's the feature. It's got a sneak, at the end. Of course, then I come find out it's not a sneak, it's a snug. But everybody likes sneak at the time. They're like, it's not snug and dawdle, doesn't work. So I thought linger or loiter, like you sneak in and have a drink. So loiter or hang out or whatever. And then so I just Googled synonyms, and I'm like, dawdle. Dawdle's a great word. You dawdle, So anyways, the idea was to sneak in, have a drink, dawdle, hang out. And that was where that name came from. But the funny part was I originally was thinking sneak. Okay, that's what that booth is called, but it's a snug.
Yeah.
So anyways.
Yeah, you learned something.
You learned something there. Yeah. Yeah. So, and I kept Googling sneak booth and nothing would come up. And finally it did, like a snug. And I'm like, oh. Anyways.
Yeah, there it is. There it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So named by accident, kind of.
Well, let me ask you this.
Please.
Yeah, when it comes to the three concepts that you have, and I was thinking earlier about kind of the metrics around, how you gauge performance or kind of watch over the numbers and all that. Are you able? I mean, do you have kind of the same metrics for all three, or are they different? And I've never asked that question before, and I know you weren't. I didn't give you a prep on that. I'm just curious.
That's all right. Yeah, no, I mean the restaurants are similar. The restaurants are similar. The bar is a little different. But I have a GM at the Depot who just started in the last 3 or 4 months, and she's used to having full P&L access. And it's not something I've done necessarily in the past for a couple of reasons. But one is just it's a lot of data that they don't necessarily have control over. And my focus has always been the prime cost. It's labor and food cost. Those are between 60 and 70% of your cost. Yeah. So if you don't manage those, 3 or 4 points on your food cost is thousands of dollars. The rest of the P&L, if you manage it right, I mean, you have insurance, which is a once a year type of thing. And you have rent and you have utilities, which they got you over a barrel there. So no shopping around or managing that. You're not going to shut the lights off 30 minutes earlier to, save some electricity. But anyway, so there's a lot of, there's some things you can do, but if your AC goes down in this July in Alabama, you're not putting off getting it fixed. You're going to get it fixed, and same thing with, if your range goes down or your oven or whatever it is, you're not going to go without it because you're over budget. You're going to get it fixed. Yeah. So there's a lot there that I don't have them worry about, but food cost and really understanding food cost, that has been a challenge. Even for some seasoned chefs, really understanding how food costs should work. And it's not just a percentage, it's understanding why it's a certain percentage from menu mix and understanding the difference between, 30% food cost or $20 plate margin, and understanding how labor plays into a dish. It's just being able to speak, to teach them to speak intelligently about how food cost works has been something that's been an ongoing thing. And just people that come up through the ranks, cooks to chef de parties to sous chefs and stuff, how they come up and they start learning these things and teaching them that concept. That's a big one. Yeah. And then labor is, labor's the big one, and that's complicated as well. That's how you schedule, that's menu design, menu engineering, is, and that kind of stuff, and understanding prep and efficiencies there. So those are the two big ones. You do those right, the rest of it is, within reason, of course. Yeah. Is managing your cost of goods is a big one. So now I can look and glance at that and know where I'm at, so I look at the P&L every month. I'm doing, okay, what are our liquor costs, beer, wine? You can go down the line. What's our total cost of goods that includes paper and disposable and chemicals and all the other good stuff? And then, what's our labor at? So, our labor goal is 30% of sales, and our food cost is, 33, 34% is our goal. So you manage those correctly, and when you don't, it costs you.
Yeah. Have those goals changed, in the recent months with the labor shortages that we've had and the food price increases and all that? Or are you making changes on the price side or saving money elsewhere to try to recover some of that?
Not a lot of places to save right now. Mostly it's a combination. Mostly it's an adjustment. Our food cost is running around 37 to 38%. And that's even with raising some prices a little bit. There's only so much you can do, the old mayor of the town used to ask, man, why can't we have a steakhouse in this town? And I said, if you Ruth's Chris or Bones in Atlanta or one of these big ones, I said, are you people ready to pay $80 here in this town for a filet mignon? Or whatever it is. I from San Francisco and ate at one. It was $89. It was like $89 for 10-ounce bone-in fillet, and I was like, holy moly.
Yeah.
And Ruth's Chris, you're not paying less than $40 for a steak. I think their sirloin's probably that much. I said, this town really ready for that? So anyway, yeah, we're charging more than we ever have, unfortunately, for our steaks, and we're also taking a hit on our food costs. Yeah. So yeah, it's what you got to do. Our labor shortages, our labor is just good because we can't find people. We're working with lighter crews. So, it's actually, we could, at least at the depot and some other places, we could actually afford to have it a little higher and put a little less strain,
Yeah.
we're only open 5 shifts instead of the 9 or so at the depot. And we're only open, we're only open 7 shifts at the Hound instead of 12. So, and that's because we can't find people. But so our labor cost is raising. Our cost of labor is going up. We are paying our people more, which is not a bad thing necessarily. But I don't know that all the customers understand that are willing to realize that dining out is going to cost more.
Right. Yeah. And it does.
Yeah.
And, if anyone that hasn't noticed that just hasn't been out to eat, because, I'm certainly attuned to it. And everywhere my wife and I go, it's more expensive these days. And I understand why. And I hope the general public does as well. But, and I think they do. I think they're starting to get the message that that we don't have staff, and you just can't do what you used to do at the same price. And
you can't open up the news these days and not see something about supply chain issues and labor issues. It's every day. It's something, multiple outsources. So unless you're heads completely in the sand, you're going to be seeing that. So, most reasonable people can understand that. Unfortunately, there seems the rise of unreasonable people is also happening now. So, but
we have a way of finding those. Just about anybody that's dealing with the public understands that there's a number of those out there. Let me ask you a different question. How has these the shortages and things, have they impacted your marketing at all in terms of what you're doing? Are you trying to bring in more business, or are you kind of holding back on the marketing end?
It's limited what we're doing with our menus. Our menus are, especially, it changes. Last week we couldn't get chicken thighs anywhere. Right. for that couldn't find chicken thighs. So, we do a smoked chicken dish at the Hound, and it's you got to change it out. What can we get? So it has more to do with, and our chefs and sous chefs are spending more time shopping for products. Our vendors have diversified more, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Although you lose kind of your buying power when you're able to concentrate a lot of things
right.
Amongst a few vendors. But it's marketing wise, I don't do a lot. I don't do a lot of marketing. I never have. In the beginning of the Hound, I had some regulars. One was in radio and one was in the newspaper, and they were really nice people. And a couple of times I said, "Sure, we'll do a newspaper ad, or we'll do something on the radio," and it was just money down the drain. I don't do any of the traditional advertising. And I don't have a PR firm. Fortunately, the chef at the Depot's daughter does some marketing and PR, and she does some at a really good rate to help us out. But if she didn't do that for us, I wouldn't have any. I would just do social media, the free social media. And what I tell my people is word of mouth. Take care of the customers that come in your door. That is the best form of marketing. Is a happy customer that says, "I had a dinner at the Depot last night and it was amazing and service was really good," and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Same thing, the Hound. And that's, it goes back to me, the sales, the cold calling and doing all this stuff. It's like, I just create the space, train your people well, and make sure that, you do your best to try to be excellent, and people will keep coming. And so far that's worked.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm also not in a crowded space. I mean, my approach in New York or Los Angeles or Chicago is going to be a different approach, where there's, forget what it was. Again, most of my data is from where I'm from, but San Francisco, I think they issued like 3,000 food permits, which is everything from food trucks to food stalls to restaurants in 1 year. And San Francisco is a small city compared to some other ones. And it's just, holy crap. Yeah. In that space, there's some other things you may have to do. I get it. If you're trying to get some of the awards, I don't think you can get a James Beard Award without really paying a marketing and PR firm a lot of money, Yeah. So that's just never something we're not doing it for the accolades, really. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Some people are more into that than others. And, and you're right. You're right about the location, because if you're in a crowded marketplace and, there's more than one option for bourbon, in a neighborhood, right, then right, you may need to crank up that marketing mix a little bit more and be and more. Also, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say also. Sorry, please.
we both want to.
I interrupted you first. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, if you're in that crowded marketplace, you've got to get the word out and be more top of mind to the people out there. That was my point.
Yeah. And I think that also, so you do this huge marketing blitz, and you have 500 people at your door the first night, and they all have a crappy experience. Then the old rule of, they're going to tell 10 people about their crappy experience. The people that have an awesome experience are going to tell 2, right? That old rule. And so I'd rather do it more organically and grow more organically. So that's kind of been my approach, right or wrong or whatever. It is what it is at this point for me.
Well, so far it's worked. You've been in the business, in the game now for some time, and you found success. So as you said, it varies across the country in different locations, right, as to what that marketing mix might look like. And you figured out what works for you. So let me ask you this: so do you have some more things up your sleeves? Do you have more plans to create new concepts, or to take current concepts elsewhere? Are you thinking about that right now?
Yes, we have been. Actually, pre-COVID, we had kind of backtrack to retaining and the top talent. The top performers. What I saw was that in order to keep them, engaged, at some point they're either going to go off and do their own thing, and somebody else, or they're going to, I don't know, they're going to leave the industry, or they're going to go, do their own thing, really. So why not grow by investing in your people and helping them do their own thing and have a piece of their own thing? So that was part of making, this Chef Scott at the Depot a partner. I'm going to make Chef Robbie, who's been with me over 4 years at the Hound. We're just going through the process now of making him a partner. And my GM there, Keisha, who's now my director of operations over all the concepts, made her a partner at the Hound. And so the idea of, the next steps for these top people is going to be their own place. And my management style kind of lends itself to that as well, as far as letting them figure a lot of stuff out and learn and get insight where they may not have the confidence or the desire, but they may not realize it, but they could run in their business themselves,
Yeah.
And they don't need me. So I'm hoping they want to partner with me and they want to stick with me and they want to stick as part of a larger group and maybe own a smaller portion of a bigger pie. So the idea is that we have to grow to keep these people engaged. And Auburn is still, relatively speaking, a blank slate. We have 14 chicken finger places, but we have one Thai place, so there's a lot of different opportunities, I think, to do things right or in a different way. So yes, I have a couple different concepts. I had purchased some property, in Auburn, and one of my partners at the time worked with a guy who led a development group, a investment group who developed student housing, and he talked to his guy and he said, "Oh man, that sounds like a cool concept. I want to. How about if I buy up some property around you guys or partner with you guys, and I build some student housing? This is kind of the hub." Turned into a project called Midtown here in town, and he ended up buying up. I don't know what the final acreage was, 20 or 30 acres along one of the main boulevards between Opelika and Auburn, and I still had about a acre and a half in the middle of it, and I was going to do 3 or 4 concepts in the middle of it, and in the middle of this development, and COVID hit. So I had this property. He had already built the student housing, and it was filled up and successful, looked great, but I wasn't ready to, at this point, take the dive. I just signed an architect's agreement to design the place. I think it was 2 weeks. It was like March 1st or something, and then 2 weeks later, 2020, it hits. So anyways, this developer called me and he's like, "Are you still going to move it? Still do something there?" And my intention at the time was, yes, I have some concept. At the time, I was going to do a gaming concept. So an indoor outdoor space. So I was going to do pizza and other things and analog gaming. So bocce, cornhole, foosball, that kind of stuff. All the kind of analog interactive games that people could do, and share this kind of common courtyard, and then build 3 or 4 concepts around this space that was shared outdoor space. So I was going to do 2 bars and 2 restaurants. There was the long-term plan that I could build over years.
Right.
With the first being this parlor concept. And then I have my chef at the Hound is very passionate about Asian food. So we've been doing this Chubby Belly concept that he's done all the design for, the menu design, everything. We've been doing these pop-ups now for about a year. So it's a ramen, style place, which we don't have here also. So we've been doing that. We do pop-ups at the bar. We've taken over, done takeovers at the Hound. So that's a concept that's in the works and that we're actively doing. Mm-hmm. We're in the process. I've signed agreements to develop or work with the same right down the street from Sneak and Dawdle to build out a catering commissary kitchen, and do a space there. But when COVID hit, sorry, I lost track here. But when COVID hit, the developer called me, and the first time I said, "No, I'm still going to do something. I'm just waiting to see, what's happening, how long COVID." At the time, we didn't know how long it's going to last. There was no relief happening for anybody. And so the second time he called me, I said, "Well, what are you offering?" So so I ended up selling the property to him, and again, just kind of banking the keep hoarding my cash so I could be there, come out of this at the end to hopefully hire people back and stay in business. So So yeah, we've been thinking about expanding. We've been thinking about doing that. We still are. There's seems to be somewhat of a light at the end of the tunnel. So we are going to make some investments in this next year. We're going to expand and put permanent patios in at both restaurant concepts and probably at the bar as well. So more outdoor space under roof that we can use year round, and hopefully, or more year round, I should say. Here in Alabama, outdoors out in the sunlight in July is just not a pleasant experience. And same thing in January. So you get about maybe 4 months, where it's pleasant to be outside here without any kind of, roof, without fans and heaters and stuff, So the idea is to be able to create a space with use fans and heaters, and hopefully we'll get 9 months or 10 months out of it, instead of the 3 or 4. So we're making those investments in the existing spaces, and then the catering stuff, which we are getting a lot of inquiries about, and I think it's a good space that we can expand into. And then, right now I'm just telling my people it doesn't make sense to open up new concepts with kitchens if we can't fill our existing ones. If we can't get those back up to where we need them, why are we going to open up something new that's going to compete for an already difficult labor market? So those concepts are there, but we're not taking big steps at this point to develop those. It's just we got to figure out what's going to happen with this labor market. So
that's a great point. And concepts are there and kind of ready to rock and roll, but like you said, don't compete with yourself.
Well, and that's what I've told my managers, my leaders too, is that, to a certain degree, the money's there. The money can be found somewhere. You can find the money. Concepts and the opportunity for concepts are there.
Yeah.
People will always be the bottleneck. The people will. Yeah. You got to have the people you can trust, the people that have integrity, the people that are hardworking and believe in and have passion for what you're doing. And if you can find those people and you can retain those people and those people can grow, there's no limits to what we can do, really, because the money we'll find the money and we'll find the space. We'll find that, so.
Yeah.
Now people's big.
Yeah. Very, very well said. And gosh, it's, I guess we could go on forever. I just looked down at the clock.
Sorry.
And we've been rocking. Yeah. We've been rocking and rolling. So,
you have to do some editing, I guess.
No. We're gonna go with all of it. It's great to kind of hear the backstories and all the things that you've been thinking and you've been planning for, and how COVID impacted that with these concepts and kind of slowed everything down, labor issues, food costs. I think we touched on a lot of challenges and a lot of opportunities. So I want to thank you wholeheartedly for your taking the time to be on and to share your story. And for, all our listeners out there, again, it's Matt Poirier, and they're in Auburn, Alabama, for the most part. Go Crimson Tide, right?
No. War Eagle. It's Auburn.
No Crimson Tide around there, huh?
No Crimson Tide. Well, sure, there's Crimson Tide around here, but no, this is Auburn. It's Auburn War Eagle. That's what they say around here. So
yeah, I might have cut that piece out and say go War Eagle.
Yeah, just say War Eagle. Yeah, War Eagle. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so Auburn's the college here, and that's their big rival. So
yeah. So
that's their big rival.
Yeah, we don't want to go in that direction then. And I blow it every podcast in some form or fashion. So this time I waited to do it again. But again, thank you for being here, and for our listeners, the Hound, the Depot, Sneak and Dawdle, all great concepts. And and we encourage you guys locally to, if you haven't been there in a while, get back over. And if you've never tried it, please go out and share some time with these wonderful concepts and the wonderful people that are there, and let them know how they do. Because delivering a great experience is what it's all about, and I'm sure you're going to have it at any of them. And if you can get into that snug, jump in there.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
That was really the coolest thing I've heard so far. I like that idea. But again, thank you, Matt, for being here.
They find some value.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our listeners will get a lot of value out of what you had to share, and we appreciate you doing it. So,
Okay.
again, thanks for being on today, and we
Absolutely.
wish you guys the best.
Thank you.
Um,
Appreciate it.
and to all our listeners, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Local Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Johnson, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thank you.